18 to 29. They voted 66% for Obama. And union workers, which Obama had been worried would be one of his bigger challenges, voted 60% for Obama. The people who voted for McCain were older people, and I'm also very interested how they define that. That's people over 65. So that's not yet me. They were overwhelmingly for McCain. I mean, not so overwhelmingly, actually. They were 53 to 45. And white men. So inasmuch as the future of this country, and I think Karen was implying this, is the younger people, and blacks and Latinos, and if we can get the Employee Free Choice Act passed, union members, this says something very different from what Karl Rove said 4 years ago, which is we are beginning an age of a permanent Republican majority. It's stunning to think that he said that and was not laughed out of the room 4 years ago, but how different that is. In terms of, I think Steve will say more about the Senate, but let me just say something here because it's important in terms of how we think about our battles. I want to talk about our four biggest battles, I think, as progressives, but what Steve and others always remind us is that even as we face the big battles over the war, over health care, over the economy, and over the environment, that there are a lot of medium-sized and smaller battles that we can fight. And keep in mind that in the last Congress, getting a voting member of Congress for Washington, D.C. went down by 3 votes in the Senate. The Employee Free Choice Act was basically 3 votes away from passing. That's the one that will make it much easier for people to form unions. So when Democrats go to picking up 5 seats in the Senate, that is huge for a number of very important medium-sized battles that we have. Those are winnable battles now. I mean, I know it's modest to say that Washington, D.C. should have at least have a voting member of the House of Representatives. It's like 1/10 of what we want for D.C. That now just became possible, not just with Barack Obama, but with 5 new senators. We may get 6 new Democratic senators. The one that's within 500 votes is the Al Franken one in Minnesota. It was a lot of fun for some of us. One of the close friends of many of you in this room and the fights around fair trade in the 1990s was Mark Ritchie. He's now the Secretary of State of Minnesota, and it's his day now. The big recount is in Minnesota, and Mark is running it. So he's very happy. He doesn't, I mean, privately, Sarah Anderson, who's here, who's been in Minnesota, thinks that it's probably not going to change, but there's a chance of that. I was saying to folks here, I mean, I love this country where a convicted felon got elected to the Senate in Alaska. That was a surprise to me. And I wanted to ask the question, and some of you may know the answer, is whether he was allowed to vote for himself as a convicted felon. In some states you can't. You may know the answer.
I just know that New Jersey and Louisiana are really happy that Alaska's stolen the most corrupt state title away.
Right. And I'm very sad that someone who I personally know and thought was going to win, Jeff Merkley, who's a progressive in Oregon, it looks like didn't quite make it in Oregon. They're still not calling Oregon and Alaska and Minnesota, but alas, the Republican leads in all 3.
Did you look today?
Including Minnesota?
I think
Minnesota,
I think Merkley was ahead today.
Oh, well, then there you go. Okay. That would be wonderful.
The difference in Minnesota.
In Minnesota is 500, but they're no
And
longer.
there are a bunch of provisional ballots not in yet.
Yeah. Okay. So it could be. Could be we get 6 instead of 5. Now, Bill Gould, who is the wonderful director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, is now here with us, and he is predicting that of the new members of the House, and the new members of the House, it's somewhere between 29 and 32. What is the number that you are saying of new members of the House?
It's 25, range 25 to 32.
Okay. Bill is saying that 11 of those will join the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Not just Bill, but his co-chairs, Lynn Woolsey and Barbara Lee, released a statement yesterday that predicted that. That would push the caucus from 73 to 84. That's an interesting number because Democrats now can waste. I mean, Nancy Pelosi can win votes in the House while still having 40 Democrats abandon her because she's got now 259 Democrats in the House. You only need 218 to win a vote. So the question of whether the Congressional Progressive Caucus could be a power bloc is very, very interesting. And in the conversation, we should talk more about it. Okay, now, just a few words on these four big fights that I think we need to be smart about how we fight. As Karen mentioned, IPS is putting out a book in a month called Mandate for Change, and it has essays from many of you and from Bill Fletcher and others, and it tries to lay out an argument for a different America and a different agenda. And part of it, and this is part of our interpretation of what happened on Tuesday, is it's not just all the wonderful things that Karen just said. It was a rejection of two big ideological frames that Republicans have been pushing for 30 years. On the economy, the neoliberal, market fundamentalist Washington consensus that markets can solve most problems, that's gone. And the neoconservative notion that the U.S., through reckless unilateralism, can create democracy around the world and be a force for good, that's gone. So part of what's going on, and it's, I think, important just to say a word about that. That's part of our bigger job as progressives, is to end those eras and replace them with new frames and new arguments about the role of government, about the role of civil society, that replace, I think those two ideologies are failed, but what replaces them is not yet certain. And there will be a fight even within the Democratic Party about what replaces them. In terms of the role in the world, you'll have what Mark Raskin calls the prudent imperialists. People like John Kerry, they still want the U.S. all over the world, but they want to do it prudently and multilaterally. And then others of us who say, no, the U.S. should stop being a global cop and should pull back. We don't need 1,000 bases around the world. We don't need any bases around the world. That's a big debate. And on the economic side, in terms of replacing market fundamentalism and neoliberalism, it's sort of responsible capitalism. That's a lot of what, say, Robert Rubin and Larry Summers would be pushing. Some new regulations, versus a very different notion of the economy that is bottom-up, that's democratic, that's green, and that has global relations with others. So that's the big picture. Now, we're going to have, I think, 4 giant fights. And our job is to do what the left did under Roosevelt's administration. It is to pull the debate in our direction. The big fights, I think, of the next year are the economy, poverty/inequality, war and peace, and healthcare. And so just a word on each. On the economy, already we're going to have a big fight in a week and a half. There will be a debate over a stimulus package in the Congress. Most progressive economists and even not so progressive economists think it needs to be big, that we've already done most of the things you can do to get an economy going. We now need a fiscal stimulus. Most of them are saying it should be 300 to 400 billion, and Nancy Pelosi seems to now, from the latest I'm hearing, have settled around 150 billion. And Obama's talking about 125 billion. So we're about to have not quite what I was hoping we would have in 2 weeks, but we'll have a big debate about the future of the economy. And I think for progressives, so that's quick. That's not even January 20th. That's in a week and a half. We really need to pull together. Different people here have been part of coalitions that are pushing for a bigger stimulus, for a greener stimulus. I am feeling, and this is a challenge in our progressive ranks, the lack of harmony between our greener wing and our bluer wing being more labor and so on. We don't have a big, robust coalition behind a giant green stimulus that would transform this economy by creating, green cities, make Joe the plumber, Joe the green plumber, and green transit and so on. We don't. And much of the stimulus I think you'll see put forward in a week and a half will be more blue than green. It'll have some green rhetoric, but the green should be the bigger picture on which it's all written, and I don't think we're quite there yet. But it's not going to be as big as we hoped, and this will be a recurring battle. So that's one. I'll just say privately, one of the things I'm loving about this period is, since this crisis is global, I mean, it's hurting all of us. It's hurting all of you. It's hurting all of us. It's hurting us as nonprofits, but it's global. It is bringing back. I've been spending a lot of my time on phone calls. It's 7 in the morning here, and it's 8 p.m. in Manila, with people all around the world who are coming together, and there will be actions around the world on November 15th around the financial summit that George Bush is holding. This will revive the Seattle Coalition globally.